I'm just going to get straight into things because I need to get this off of my chest. I fought in the Vietnam War when I was young. I did not want to go, but I was drafted into it. And when I was drafted into it, a million thoughts filled my head. What if I got shot, did die, but spent the rest of my life in a wheelchair, or massively disfigured? What if I died and my girlfriend was left alone in this cruel world? What if I was held hostage out in their jungles for years on end with insects crawling all over me? But nonetheless, I had to get out into the war, to boot camp, and I had one heck of a crazy instructor, I tell you. He saw I was a bit chubby and started going on and on about how much everyone should crack me over a pot and beg my organs. And he always called me Egg from then on, even after I lost fat and gained more muscle. Of course, I was not alone in being picked on. When he started, he looked at the man standing closest to him and grabbed his cheeks in a death grip that hurt to look at, and I imagine probably hurt a lot more to him himself. During this time, he said that he was a good young boy and should maintain said status. The man next to him got told to be a slave to someone. I don't remember. I just remember that after this I stopped trying to focus on what was happening around me and only concentrated when he directly confronted me. Who did this guy think he was? This was abuse, harassment, ad hominems galore. And I think I'm not the only person in there who quickly started to hate him. The way he treated us at boot camp was despicable. Always pushing us around, abusing us, and giving us unnecessary grief. But, as I understand it, this was just their way to prepare us for what battle was like in a psychological aspect. Always immensely unpleasant, confusing, and always picking on us for the most unfair of reasons. Like my weight, for example. The rest of boot camp was not much better. I had to go to training in unpleasant weather conditions. There was always mud everywhere, the food tasted rotten, the gunshots were hurting my ears, the drill instructor liked to beat us for no reason. I never got 8 hours of sleep. By the time boot camp was done and over with, I hated everything in life. I would not laugh at jokes anyone told me. I would not enjoy good water when I got it. I was just cynical. And I had not even gotten to the battlefield yet. Oh God, the battlefield. Before actually dealing with the war zone itself, we all had to be on the lookout for the insects. Mosquitoes especially. Mosquitoes in Vietnam carry malaria and dengue fever. Every time we saw one, whether it was during lunch or when everyone was supposed to be asleep, someone would scream, sending everyone into a panic and causing us to go nuts trying to kill them. I don't think we were ever not behind on sleep. Either the insects would keep us awake, or the horror of what might happen to us did. When I got onto the battlefield, it was even worse. When we went out, we had to constantly look out in every direction because our enemy could pop out of the ground or jump out of the trees. And they did. I saw Thomas, who I was just starting to know, who had just told me the day before about his mother back home, get stabbed in the throat when someone pounced on him from a tree. He tried to speak, but his throat was so gouged open that nothing but gurgles and bits of blood came out. The day after that, we all started caring for each other more often. Whenever one of us was having trouble carrying on because they felt weak, someone who was feeling better would be there for him and offer to carry some weight for him. I remember when I was breaking down at the thought that I would go home as a mangled corpse with my eyes, teeth, and throat ripped out for my girlfriend to see before being buried. Larry and Steve were there for me. They told me that they would help watch my back so that no one could rip me apart like that. They stayed close for comfort, and I always felt like I had people caring for me. I think the one thing that happened to be worse than the fear of dying was when we killed someone by our own hand. As agreed upon, Larry, Steve, and I watched out for each other on the battlefield. And sure enough, when someone attempted to jump on us, we pounced from out of the ground and we all shot him until he was dead. It was 3 against 1. He may have had the element of surprise, but it was not enough. Not by himself. And once he was dead, the 3 of us fell down on the ground and cried. This guy was a man just like any of us. I had a girlfriend back at home, so maybe he did too. And just like I feared would happen to me, he would be severely injured in his coffin if he even went back at all. We couldn't just bring him to the Vietnamese and give them his body. So we could maybe hope that he would be found, but there was no guarantee. I think we sat there for a good half hour, crying over his corpse and wishing death upon whoever brought this curse upon us. It was disgusting. We were young men, and this is what our youth was used for, to end lives. But unfortunately, after a while, we realized that if we stayed too long, someone else might show up, and we would have to fight them off too. So we left, leaving his body there to rot. And as if this wasn't enough, they decided that we needed to do even more harm to Vietnam. They gave us a new chemical to try out, Agent Orange. They told us that this would be a spray that would wipe the enemy of their cover in the trees and help us to find them more easily. And I suppose that they were right. Agent Orange did kill every leaf it came into contact with, but it was also fairly toxic to breathe in. That was how we lost Larry. He breathed the stuff in and had trouble breathing thereafter. We tried comforting him on his hospital bed, but we were too cowardly to get very close. He died, a slow, painful death. They said that Agent Orange wasn't an immediate threat to our lives. As if. And after that, it was just Steve and I, alone, in Vietnam, trying to fend off our enemies with a chemical and hoping not to die. We were like brothers together. He told me all about how when he left the war, he wanted to build a house. He dreamed of having his own custom house, and he was going to build one. That was actually a nice thought. Going back out of this war zone and just having a place to call your own. It was a peaceful thought, and you know what? It actually seemed like we were going to make it through this. Like the 2 of us were going to get out alive. We were hopeful. At least until they introduced a new chemical. Oh, that new chemical. They called it the Infiltrator. Basically, what it does is it seeps into the body and stays dormant for a few days, waiting to attack. It then goes to the brain, where it takes control, lose any free will or emotions, and just make them viciously attack everyone in sight. That was what they told us, and let me tell you, it was true. We gassed our enemies with this stuff, and they felt nothing at first. Then, days later, we would hear the screaming over in the distance while we hid with our gas masks. The screaming gave me a good idea what was happening. They were terrified to see their comrades suddenly start attacking them for no apparent reason. How many people were we driving to kill each other with this stuff? Hundreds? Maybe even thousands? All we knew was that we were killing our opponents with it. And even then, of course, this wasn't enough. None of our biochemicals were enough to really stop them, no matter how hard we tried. The Viet Cong were always gonna come back, and we began to hate being there. We were killing all of these people. We never seemed to stop killing these people since they always came back, and we ourselves were watching our comrades die from them. It was obvious we were not gonna win. We just wanted to go home already. But we did not go home. We were still stuck in there, stuck in the war zone, and using a chemical weapon that turns people into zombies. It was horror. I would have gladly gone home and let myself get tortured for weeks if it meant I did not have to stay here any longer. But I did not have that option, unfortunately. But I still wanted to return home, so I sure was not going to end it with a gunshot. I had to make it out. One day, a few days after we attacked our enemies with more of this gas, some of the Viet Cong made their way to us. Like 50 of them. Don't know how they found us, but they did. Curse from God, I suppose. Their faces did not express at all. They were purely emotionless and did nothing but look forward. At least until they noticed another person, at which point they looked directly at them and started for them. We shot them to death for the most part, but a few of them managed to survive and get close enough for us to have to stab them to death. And we did not really have any casualties on our side because these people lost the intelligence needed to really think about how to fight back. They just reached their hands forward slowly while we either shot them or stabbed them in the wrists. Steve told me that it was not hard to do. A few days later, I noticed him start acting strange. It started with him just simply acting sluggish and unresponsive in a timely manner, such as not responding to me until I shouted his name, which concerned me because out on the battlefield that could be fatal. I tried to talk to him about it, but he did not even talk to me, just shooed me away with his hand. But I still cared about him and wanted to see him survive, so I redoubled my efforts to try and help him survive. I was always looking out from behind and in front of him so nobody could hurt him, and constantly checking him for mosquitoes. But then later on he looked directly at me. He wasn't looking around for any enemies or anything, just eyeing me. "Hey, Steve, is something wrong?" I started frantically looking all over my body for anything. "Is there a mosquito on me?" But sure enough, there was nothing on me at all. Yet he kept staring at me. After a few more moments, he started walking towards me. His face was motionless without any expression, and he did nothing but look at me. And it was then that I realized that somehow he had gotten sick with the gas. How? I don't know. Regardless, I started to shake in fear. I could hear the quaking in my boots, never mind that I could feel it too. "Steve, zombie, friend, mother, war." I spat out incoherently in a desperate attempt to get through to him. Nothing worked. He still kept coming at me, and I did not want to kill him, but if I didn't, he would either kill me or go on to infect everyone else, or infect me where I would risk infecting everyone else, and I could not let that happen. He was around 7 feet away when I pulled out my rifle and shot him in the shin, causing him to fall on the ground. Even so, he limped towards me with his other leg, all the while not showing any emotion on his face. And I shot him with his other foot, spewing more blood all over the place and knocking him onto the ground. But he then started crawling towards me, not showing any facial expressions at all and just looking directly at me. He was about 6 feet away, which made me back up further from him and moving much slower now, and so I was able to shoot him in the head, killing him instantly. I took a good long look at my friend. I had killed him. He was my best friend. He was always there for me when I needed him. We were like brothers, and I just shot him in the head. His dream of returning home to build a house was now destroyed because of me. I stayed there for a while, keeping a safe distance away from the gas so I would not be at risk of catching any gas that his body was emitting. How could I do this to him? He wanted to build a house. Now he couldn't, all because I shot him until he was dead. When I went back to the base, I reported this incident to them, and they made no attempts to recover his body for fear that they might get infected by the gas themselves. It turns out that the gas can be breathed out in small amounts once it takes over, and the small amounts can cause you to become infected. And The only reassuring thing at all was that this was a toxic chemical that wears off after it has been exposed to the air for a few weeks, and it was not a virus or a bacteria, and was therefore incapable of recreating itself. So at least it will not turn into an epidemic. Not that it mattered to me, since I already killed so many others, including my best friend. I didn't have it in me to care so much anymore, but they told me very clearly that if I told anyone about this, they would arrest me for life. Guess they didn't want anyone to know about the fact that they unleashed even more biochemicals than they tell you about today. A few weeks later, I was honorably discharged. I went home to be with my girlfriend, but it was just not the same. I tried to get along with her, but she was always so optimistic and did not care about the fact that people were dying in Vietnam. She did not seem to mind that I had seen people die. Hush now, love. You're safe from harm. You're here with me. But I wasn't safe. If the infiltrator was still in my system and I did not know it, I could attack her any day. If I breathed in Agent Orange, I might get sick sooner or later. But it did not matter. She never believed me. She told me that the government was morally upright and would never, ever use biochemicals like that. Certainly not ones like the infiltrator. She told me that I was crazy and advised I seek psychotherapy. But I knew I was not crazy. I saw this with my own 2 eyes. I knew it was true, and if she could not accept that, I could not accept her. So I broke up with her. It made her cry, but I couldn't be with someone who said that what I experienced was all a lie. But things never got better for me. I had enough money to build a house, just like Steve wanted to, but it was never enough. I could never stop thinking about what happened. The people that I watched die, the people I killed, and it has been many years since then, and I just cannot hold it anymore. I know that a lot of practices in Vietnam have been exposed, but I see that this one has not been exposed. And if I get arrested for it, then so be it. But the world needs to know about the zombie gas that we had used in Vietnam. It's dangerous in so many ways and so inhumane, and I cannot forgive them for manufacturing it.